Can politicians be trusted? And how will Jasmin Crockett prove she's truly different? Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment. And get ready for tomorrow's incredible episode. Now let's get into it. Jasmin Crockett, a congresswoman from Texas, has proven time and time again that her words can hit harder than a fist. She grew up in Dallas, where she learned to stand up for herself and for others. So when she was invited to appear on Real Time with Bill Maher in Los Angeles, she knew it wouldn't just be an interview, it would be a fight. But what happened live on April 11th, 2025, shocked not only the studio, but all of America. The HBO studio buzzed with tension. Spotlights heated the air. The scent of ozone and forgotten coffee lingered in the dressing room. Audience members murmured to one another. Technicians checked the sound. Backstage, Jasmin adjusted her blazer, her fingers tingling slightly. She wasn't afraid of Bill, his sarcasm, or his habit of cornering guests. But something in the studio's energy told her to stay sharp. Bill walked onto the stage, his silver hair gleaming under the lights. The audience erupted in applause. He cracked a few jokes about politics, but quickly got to the point. Tonight, we have Jasmin Crockett with us, a congresswoman who's not afraid to say what's on her mind. "Welcome," he said, winking to the crowd. Jasmin walked out smiling, but her eyes were locked on Bill. She sat down with her arms crossed, ready for anything. "Thanks, Bill. I'm here to speak the truth, not play games," she replied, and the crowd hummed in approval. Bill didn't waste any time. "Let's get to what everyone's talking about. New tariffs on Chinese goods, 145% on everything from phones to clothes. Prices are already going up, people are complaining. Do you support this? Or is this just a punch in the gut for American wallets?" The room fell silent. Jasmin knew this wasn't a throwaway question. The economy was on everyone's mind. She leaned back in her chair, keeping her eyes on Bill. "Bill, I understand why people are worried. Tariffs aren't candy. They hit people where it hurts. But let's look at the bigger picture. China has been bending the rules for years, undercutting prices, crippling our factories. In my district in Dallas, people lost jobs because cheap imports killed local production. Tariffs are an attempt to reset the balance. But are they working? So far, I see more questions than answers. We need to make sure that money goes towards supporting our workers, not just padding the budget." The audience applauded, but Bill wasn't done. "All right, but China didn't stay quiet. They hit back with 84% tariffs on our exports, soybeans, coal, everything. Farmers in Iowa and Nebraska are screaming they're losing markets. What do you say to them?" Jasmin nodded, acknowledging the complexity. "To the farmers, I say, I hear you. We can't let our people pay the full price of a trade war. But backing down isn't the answer. We need a plan. Subsidies for farmers, new markets in Europe or Asia. We can't just shrug and say, well, China won. This is about our economy and our pride." The room buzzed again. Someone in the audience even shouted in support. Bill smiled, but his eyes gleamed. He had something sharper coming. "All right, Jasmin, you've got away with words. But let's get into something more controversial. You called Governor Abbott Hot Wheels." Twitter exploded. Some laughed. Others said you crossed the line, making fun of his disability. What do you say? Was it just a joke, or do you really think comments like that help your cause? The air in the studio grew thick. Jasmin felt her heart pick up, but she didn't look away. "Bill, I wasn't making fun of his disability. And you know that. My words were about his policies, how he abandons people when it comes to education, healthcare, jobs. If someone twisted my words, that's on them, not me. But I'll admit, I could have been more careful. My goal is to bring people together, not divide." Applause again. But Bill leaned in, his voice quieter, more cutting. "Jasmin, people want to know who you really are. You criticize the system, but you're part of it. Here's a question I keep getting from viewers. How can you fight injustice when you're playing by Washington's rules? Aren't you afraid the machine will swallow you too?" The room froze. This wasn't just a question. It was a hit that made everyone hold their breath. Jasmin could have snapped back, could have deflected. Instead, she smiled calmly, but with fire in her eyes. "Bill, I'm not playing by Washington's rules. I'm there to change them. Every single day, I fight for the people in my district, those who can't afford a doctor, the kids in schools with broken windows. I won't get swallowed, because I know where I come from. And if anyone thinks I'll sell out, they can come to Dallas and say it to my face." The room exploded in applause. Someone even stood up. Bill raised his hands like he was surrendering, but the respect in his smile was clear. "Well, Jasmin, looks like you just won this round," he said, though there was a note in his voice. He wasn't finished yet. Backstage, the producers exchanged glances. They knew this wasn't just a show. It was a moment already spreading across the internet, a moment that could change not only Jasmin, but how America talks about politics, truth, and trust. The HBO studio buzzed with tension, akin to the moments before a lightning strike. Applause from Jasmin Crockett's remarks still lingered, yet Bill Maher was already preparing his next move. His eyes gleamed like a hunter, sensing his prey. The audience, sensing the show was transcending typical talk show boundaries, sat on the edge of their seats. The air smelled of hot stage lights and nervous anticipation, and the microphone's hum seemed louder in the silence following the applause. Bill leaned back in his chair, holding his pen like a sword, and cast Jasmin a look that balanced respect and provocation. "Jasmin, you can take a hit, that's a fact," he began, eliciting quiet laughter from the audience. "But let's get to what really concerns people. Politics today isn't just about tariffs or jokes about governors. It's about where the country is heading. With elections around the corner, people want to know, do you support the idea of universal health care? Are you for Medicare for all? Or are these just nice words for tweets that lead nowhere?" The audience murmured, some applauded, others whispered. The question was sharp. Healthcare remained one of the hottest topics in the U.S. Jasmin knew her response would determine whether she was seen as a true fighter or just another politician making empty promises. She took a deep breath, her fingers lightly gripping the armrest. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm but pierced the studio like a bell. "Bill, I'm not one to throw around nice words for likes. In my district, people are dying because they can't afford insulin. Mothers skip doctor visits to buy food for their children. Medicare for all? I'll say this. I support a system where no one has to choose between medicine and rent. Whether it's one program or a combination, I'm open to the details. But I'm not open to leaving people to fend for themselves. We're the richest country in the world, yet we act like health is a luxury." The audience erupted in applause. Some even stood. Jasmin saw a few people in the front rows, an elderly couple, a man wearing a veteran baseball cap, nodding, their eyes shining with emotion. But Bill didn't let her relish the moment. "Nicely said," he nodded, but his tone grew colder. "But here's the catch. You talk about health care for all, but how do we pay for it? Raise taxes? On whom? On the middle class, who are already barely making ends meet? Or on the wealthy, who, as we know, always find loopholes? And don't tell me about efficiency. People want numbers, Jasmin." The room quieted, sensing Bill was cornering her. Jasmin knew it was a trap. Any specific figure could become a target for critics, while evasion would appear weak. She smiled, but her eyes remained sharp. "Bill, I'm not an accountant. I'm a fighter for the people. But if you want numbers, let's face the truth. We're already paying through exorbitant hospital bills, through bankruptcies for medical debts. According to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, we could save hundreds of billions by optimizing the system. Want to know where the money comes from? Let's start by having corporations pay their fair share instead of hiding profits offshore. And yes, I'm not afraid to say, if you're making billions, you can pay a bit more so your workers don't die without medicine." The audience erupted again, but this time applause mixed with shouts, some in support, some murmuring. Jasmin noticed a man in the back rows, in an expensive suit, shaking his head, while a young woman beside him clapped as if her life depended on these words. Bill raised his eyebrows, clearly impressed, but not ready to concede. All right, Jasmin, you can fire up the crowd. But let's get to something even hotter. Immigration. We have a border that, according to some, is a sieve, and according to others, a humanitarian crisis. Are you for opening the doors to everyone, or for building walls? And don't dodge, people want to hear the truth. The studio froze. Immigration was a topic that split America like an axe. Jasmin felt the air grow heavier, as if someone had turned up the thermostat. She knew every word now carried weight. Bill, I'm for truth, not slogans. In my district, I see immigrant families working harder than anyone, paying taxes, yet living in fear of deportation. I also see people worried about their jobs, their safety. Both fears are real. My position? We need a functioning border, with technology, with personnel, not with walls that cost billions and solve nothing. But we can't punish people fleeing violence or poverty. We need a path to citizenship for those already here and clear rules for newcomers. It's not simple, but I don't believe in simple answers. The audience erupted in a mix of applause and whistles. Jasmin saw the man in the baseball cap shake his head, but the elderly woman beside him clapped, her eyes moist. Bill, sensing he was losing control of the show, decided to go all in. Jasmin, you talk about unity, but let's address what divides everyone. Your comment about Governor Abbott, you call it politics, but many saw it as disrespect to a person with a disability. One of our viewers, a veteran, sent me a question. How can you represent people if your words offend people like him? What would you say to him right now? The room fell silent, as if someone had turned off the sound. Jasmin felt her stomach tighten. This wasn't just a blow. It was a moment that could define her career. She could defend herself, blame the media, or joke. But instead, she stood from her chair, her gaze directed toward the audience. I want to address this veteran, she said, her voice quiet but piercing the silence like a knife. I'm sorry my words caused you pain. I didn't mean to offend you. My words were about politics that leave people behind, veterans, workers, families. But I acknowledge, I could have said it differently. I'm here to listen to you. If I'm wrong, tell me. Let's talk. The studio erupted in applause, but this time it was different, not just support, but recognition. Even Bill, who usually didn't let guests take the initiative, nodded, his lips forming a faint smile. Jasmin, you just did something I haven't seen in this studio for a long time, he said, but his voice carried a note of caution. But we're not done yet. We have time for one more question, and believe me, it will be tough. The audience buzzed, sensing the show was reaching a boiling point. Jasmin sat down, her heart pounding, but her eyes burning. She knew, whatever Bill threw at her, she was ready. But behind the scenes, producers already saw tweets about this moment spreading like wildfire. This was no longer just a show. It was a moment that could change the conversation in America. The HBO studio was on the verge of exploding. The tension between Jasmin Crockett and Bill Maher had reached its peak, and the audience held its breath, waiting for the final question. The air smelled of hot spotlights mixed with a faint scent of floor polish. The viewers leaned forward in their seats, their eyes darting between Jasmin, whose posture remained confident though her eyes betrayed the pressure, and Bill, whose smile had something sharp, like a blade. Bill tapped his pen against the table. His voice grew quieter, almost intimate, which only made it more dangerous. Jasmin, you talk about fighting for the people, about change, about truth. But here's what concerns many Americans, especially those watching us right now. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Can we trust you? Politics is a dirty game, and people are tired of promises. You say you're different, but how can we be sure you won't become just another face in a suit who forgets about us the moment the cameras turn off? The studio froze. This wasn't just a question, it was a challenge. One that resonated with everyone who had ever felt betrayed by the system. Jasmin felt her heart skip a beat. She scanned the audience. An older man in a baseball cap who had whistled earlier, a young woman clutching her purse like a lifeline, even the security guard by the door, who seemed to forget he was supposed to stay still. Everyone was waiting. Jasmin slowly rose from her chair. Her blazer rustled softly as she stepped forward, closer to the edge of the stage. When she spoke, her voice was low, but it pierced the silence like a bell in an empty church. "Bill, I can't make people trust me. Trust isn't words, it's action. I grew up in Dallas, where a politician's promise was worth less than a burger. My mom worked 2 jobs so we could eat, and I watched the system abandon people like her. I didn't go to Congress for the suits or the cameras. I'm there because I want every person in this country to know their voice matters. If you don't believe me, don't listen to my words. Watch what I do. Come to my district. Talk to the people I represent. They'll tell you who I am." The room erupted in applause, but Jasmin raised her hand, asking for quiet. She turned back toward the crowd, her eyes searching for the veteran who had asked her a question earlier. She didn't see him, but she knew he was listening. "And to the veteran who asked me about my words," she continued, "I want you to know I hear you. Not just today. Always. My office is open. My phone is on. If I slip, tell me. But I promise you one thing. I will never stop fighting for those who feel forgotten." The studio shook with ovations. People rose to their feet, clapping as if they could tear the air apart. Even Bill, usually composed, looked thrown off. He stood, extended his hand to Jasmin, and this time his smile was genuine, without a hint of sarcasm. "Jasmin, I have to say," he began as the applause subsided, "you didn't just survive this show. You crushed it." The audience laughed, but the laughter was warm, almost grateful. Jasmin nodded, her face still serious, but a spark gleamed in her eyes, not triumph, but hope. But the real moment happened when the show went to commercial. The cameras turned off, yet Jasmin didn't rush off stage. She stepped into the crowd, where people still stood, murmuring among themselves. An older woman, the same one who had applauded with tears in her eyes, approached her. Her hands trembled as she held out a small photograph. "This is my son," she said quietly. "He died because he couldn't afford his medication. Thank you for speaking for people like him." Jasmin took the photo, her fingers closing gently around the image of a young man with a wide smile. She didn't say anything. Words would have been too much. She simply hugged the woman, and in that moment, the studio that had just buzzed with debate became a place of something deeper. When Jasmin finally walked backstage, her aide Layla was waiting with a tablet already flashing with messages. Twitter was on fire. #Jasmin on Maher was the #1 trend. People were sharing clips of her responses, but more than that, the moments when she listened, when she admitted mistakes, when she reached out. "Did you see this?" Layla showed her a tweet from the veteran who had written, "I didn't vote for her, but today she made me think. Maybe she really does listen." Jasmin smiled, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She was thinking about that woman, the photograph, the people in her district who weren't waiting for words, they were waiting for change. She knew that tonight was only the beginning. One live show wouldn't change America, but it showed that a real, painful, necessary conversation could begin. That night, as Jasmin rode back to the hotel, Los Angeles shimmered outside the cab window. Neon lights reflected in her eyes, but she wasn't seeing them. She saw the faces of the people in the audience, heard their voices. And when the driver turned on the radio, already replaying clips from her appearance, she said softly to herself, "This is only round 1.